The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
What's working on purpose anyway? Each week, we ponder the answer to this question. People ache for meaning and purpose at work, to contribute their talents passionately and know their lives really matter. They crave being part of an organization that inspires them and helps them grow into realizing their highest potential. Business can be such a force for good in the world, elevating humanity. In our program, we provide guidance and inspiration to help usher in this world we all want, working on purpose. Now, here's your host, Dr. Elise Cortez.
Welcome back to the Working on Purpose program. Thanks for tuning in again this week. Great to have you. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez, joining you live from Dallas, which is home base for me. If we've not met yet and you don't know what I do, I'm a management consultant and organizational logotherapist specializing in activating meaning and purpose. My team and I help companies to detect and articulate their purpose, to thread it through their culture and operations. We work with forward-reaching organizations to develop inspirational leaders who create cultures where people actually want to come to work and do their best. And we provide programs that enable individual team members and leaders to discover and unleash their passion and purpose at work to catalyze fulfillment, engagement, and productivity. You can learn more about us and how we can work together at elisecortez.com. Also, if you like the content of the show, you may be interested in my next book coming out in March of 2023. It's called The Great Revitalization: How Activating Meaning and Purpose Can Radically Enliven Your Business. You can pre-order your copy at bookshop.org or barnesandnoble.com. Now let's get into today's program. With us today is Alden Mills. He's a 3-time Navy SEAL platoon commander and was the CEO of Perfect Fitness, one of the fastest growing companies in America. He's also a longtime entrepreneur with over 40 patents and has over 25 years of experience working on high performance leadership, sales, and team building. He's the author of Unstoppable Teams, the 4 essential actions of high performance leadership, which we'll be talking about today. He joins us today from Marin County, California. Alden, welcome to Working on Purpose.
Thank you, Elise. It is fantastic to be here, and I love what you're doing.
Thank you. Me too. Me too. And I meet such amazing people on the way when I do, present company included.
Well, hopefully we can just keep raising the bar together.
That's the plan. We all need a hand up, don't we?
Yes, we do, and we can learn something from everyone.
Yeah, and you know, I really admire your background, what you have done, Alden. It's inspiring to me. You know, being a 3-time Navy SEAL platoon commander, I can't even possibly imagine that. You know, your work with Perfect Fitness, amazing, compelling, and all the various patents that you've created, that's amazing. So I just want to start with an idea here. First, I wanted to present that for our listeners and viewers so they understood better. I did introduce your background, but what have you briefly gotten from all those amazing experiences?
That all of them, to find success, require exactly the same things, right? Those are all diverse backgrounds. One's in the military, one's in the civilian world, one's creating different things, writing about different things. All the same things to succeed in each of those. It's regardless of what industry you're in. It's exactly the same. And it really begins with how you lead yourself.
I hear, Alden. It starts with me. Okay, good. Well, all right. So now I want to because we're going to talk a lot about your book and the Unstoppable Teams idea that you put forth in it. But let's step back for a second here. I'm very curious, and I did certainly write a book about this, but I keep gathering perspectives about it. I want to know your perspective of how you see the world has changed in the last couple of years since COVID, et cetera. What does that mean for leaders? What does it mean for what we're up against to actually run a business?
You know, what I've really experienced over the last couple of years is we have been in somewhat of a hibernation thanks to the pandemic. Right? We've all been holed up in our home office caves. And now as things are thawing out and we're coming back together and we're starting to socialize again, it's a muscle we haven't really practiced that much.
Yeah.
And as a leader, when you think about building teams, what you're really doing is coming together with a diverse group of relationships, building on those relationships, and getting them to focus on some common goal. What we really need to be focusing on to help that happen is how do we start to socially interact again that gets everyone comfortable to say, yes, I'm on board. I want to go after that goal together.
I like that. And of course, the access to that I certainly got from your book is your care loop, right? So I want to start with that because we're going to build and pull from it. But you talk in the book that from your training and your experience, you've identified these 4 actions that really make the difference. That's connect, achieve, respect, and empower. Taken together, you say lie at the heart of every great team. So if you would just talk us through a little bit of each one of those steps or those pieces, because as we go along, we'll continue to build on them.
I use the term care as the fundamental glue for all relationships, for all team building. Care is the basic foundation for what we need to build upon the most powerful emotion there is, which is love. I call that care squared. Right? But for a leader to really get across and build trust, that would be connect, set direction, which is achieve, create contribution, which is respect, and develop owners, which is empower. Those 4 actions, I put them in an acronym called CARE, which I call the care loop. And it may sound simple to be like, oh yeah, you just need to care. But until you can really get people to care, they're not going to really dare for you. It sounds almost a little trite, but this idea of caring leads to daring. Now, why do I say that? Because when people feel cared for, they're not worried about their own selfish concerns. They're not worried about their own back anymore because they feel so trusted and cared for by their leader that they know the leader has their back. So their front sight focus is forward. And where can they help strive to make the team better and be more selfless in improving the outcome of the team?
If you don't already have that in a plaque somewhere that is available for sale, Alden, I'm just going to offer that to you as a product idea.
Okay.
Until you care, people won't dare for you. That's incredible. By chance, do you know Bob Chapman, the CEO of Barry Miller?
No.
Okay, you guys are speaking the same talk. And by the way, one of the other great things about your book, Alden, is that it's chock full of really useful, actionable ideas and principles, and then you really layer the whole thing through with the notion of care and love, which is very refreshing. And that's also what I have in my book too. Bob Chapman is known for his principle of truly human leadership, and it's all about care. It's all about everybody matters and caring for every single last individual. So he's been on the show a few times. He's definitely somebody that you want to check into, listeners and viewers as well. So you guys are.
I just wrote that down. I got that as a note. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Happy to connect you guys too. He's amazing.
We're ahead of the power curve already.
See, aren't you glad you came on? Okay, good. Me too. All right. Well, you said at the beginning of the show that for everything to go forward, for success to come in any format, you said you had to start with me. So then you have something in your book where you talk about the ability to lead yourself. What I call your platform is the foundation of leading unstoppable teams. So will you say a little bit about that 3-part formula?
Yes, that would be the focus, feel, act.
That's the one.
Correct. So I really appreciate the homework you've done on the book, Elise.
That's what I do. I'm a student.
This kind of homework, attention to detail. For everybody out there, they first understand Unstoppable Teams is set up loosely in 3 different levels of leadership. The first level of leadership, which I view as the single most important, it's like the initial pebble in the pond of the 3 rings of influence. It's leading yourself. Leading yourself then goes out to leading teams. Teams are nothing more than a reflection of its leader. And then teams then go out to the 3rd ring of leadership, which is culture. And culture is basically just made up of the consistent actions of the teams within the organization that define the culture. So we're going back to level 1, which is leading yourself in the formula of the focus, feel, act formula, which I'd like, again, people to understand is a loop. Those are 3 things that we can control. The basics of those are our thoughts, our beliefs, and our focus. When we take the action of focusing on something, good or bad, doesn't matter what it is, it generates an energy that we call a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
That feeling then derives into a behavior that we decide to take an action on. Literally a physical action. It could be no action. It could be I'm going to go and take the trash out, or I'm going to go and decide to raise my hand and challenge the leader's current opinion to turn left, that we should go right. But that continual loop are three things that are in control of us. And the more we start to understand that our focus determines our direction, our beliefs can either be limiting or they can be empowering. And those feelings come from our thought feeling loop inside of us that generate these emotions that we put into some type of fuel that our body takes an action on. Mm. So, I'm boiling some things down that some people will do doctorate dissertations on each element of that. But I'm really encouraging people, don't overthink leadership, and also understand that everyone is a leader. Now, you may say, well, then that's not true. Like, I didn't go to business school, or I haven't been a Navy SEAL, or I don't have anybody to lead. I'm like, the mere fact that you got out of bed in the morning and you decided to listen to this show is leading yourself to taking an action. How many people decide to follow you is a different question, but everyone is a leader, and all those little decisions they do through focus, feeling, and acting throughout the day will help you determine how big of an influence you want to have.
It's so crisp, Alden. It's so crisp, so accessible. And the reason that I sit through the way that I do is that it really is. I want the listeners and viewers to walk away being able to apply this stuff as soon as they walk away. And so what you just did right there is beautiful, so accessible. So now let's take us another level higher here if we can, and that's the times 10, if you will. So one of the other great things I loved about your book here is how you actually create unstoppable leaders build times 10 teams, and you say what we focus on creates a feeling. You went through all that, but it's the notion of it's that ability of being able to challenge those internal voices along the way and keep that loop going that creates the times 10, you say. And I know toward the end of the show we're going to talk more about what that really looks like. Would you say a bit more about this times 10 team notion?
So the times 10 is, I call it the 10x advantage in the book. And I really came up with that because of the time spent in SEAL team, where we talked about the force multiplication effect of a special operator. And it's not just the individual. It's not like one SEAL can all of a sudden have superhuman powers and take on 10 people. It's that a SEAL team, or a team that's worked together, has the battlefield effect of 10 players on the field. And the reason that occurs is that we're harnessing everybody's strengths together. And when you look at it from that perspective, 10x can be used not just on the battlefield, it can be used in the boardroom, it can be used in the sports room or the sports field. It can be used in art, anywhere you go where you have to have other humans coming together. That 10x advantage can be yours if you're willing to lead with care first.
Beautiful. And then taking it another step here, this is accessible and something that we can actually, I think we can train to this, but I'd like your perspective on that. But you talk about, you've discovered 7 traits that characterize unstoppable teammates, and they're general traits. But I want to know, after you talk about them, I want to know, can we learn these? So the first one is competence. Say more about that, would you?
When you're putting together a team, the large majority of us never have the opportunity to cherry pick the best players out there, right? In very unique scenarios, can we do that? Going out and putting together a team to go after Osama bin Laden, that was a cherry-picked team from across all of our special forces. The large majority of the times, we inherit the teams. We're the ones that get picked to say, hey, go and turn this team around, or take this group of individuals and help them form of a team, because there are stages to doing that. When it comes to competence, one of the killers on a team is if people say they can do something, but they really can't. Competence we're after is the ability to do what you say you can do. If you can't do something, then say you can't do that and you need help. But nothing kills competence or the building of the trust of the team faster when you say you can do something, but you don't do it or you don't follow through with it.
Mm-hmm.
Can competence be taught? Absolutely. If you're trying to become a nuclear physicist and you're not good in math, well, then it's probably not the right job for you.
Right.
Right. So help yourself out and be true to your heart, not what you think other people should tell you to do. And don't go in a nuclear physicist. Right.
Right.
Be the artist that you want to be.
Right.
But competence is definitely a key piece that can be taught, and it should be continually mentored throughout the team building process.
Mm-hmm. We won't go through all of them because I want to make sure we have time for the other things. But if you would, let me just pick a couple. Perspective is another one of the traits that you talk about, and that's really seems to me something that we could also teach. But say more about what you feel about or think about perspective.
You know what? It's an interesting point of view when you start interviewing people and asking them about their perspective. The reason I put down perspective and not attitude is that I want to understand, how do they look at life? Are they looking at life as everybody's out to get me? Am I in some kind of villain, victim, hero loop?
Right.
Or are they looking at it as like, hey, I have these opportunities to learn something. Sure, I failed, but guess what? I learned some things from it. Or, oh my gosh, I don't ever fail because, failing is bad. Those are very different perspectives on the same kind of thing.
Yes, they are.
The people who are continually wanting to improve. Tell me their perspective.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's so much we could dive into. Just for our listeners and viewers' sake, I want to also name the rest of these. So the 7 traits that Alden talks about in his book are competence, perspective, communication, drive, humility, flexibility, and selflessness. So take a note of that, and maybe you can think about that while we grab our first break here. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. We've been on the air with Alden Mills. He is the author of Unstoppable Teams, the 4 Essential Actions of High-Performance Leadership. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Dr. Elise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Elise to speak to your organization, please visit her at elisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Elise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Elise, send an email to Elise, A-L-I-S-E, at elisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us, and welcome back to Working on Purpose. Before we get back into the program, I'd like you to invite you to check out my first book that I published. It's called Purpose Ignited, and I really wrote that book to awaken readers to their passion and their purpose, and then start them down the trail of becoming an inspirational leader. So I hope you'll check that out. If you're just now joining the program, my guest is Alden Mills. He is a 3-time Navy SEAL platoon commander, entrepreneur, speaker, and author of Unstoppable Teams, the 4 Essential Actions of High-Performance Leadership. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. So for this next bit here, I'm really excited about queuing this up here because what you're talking about in this next bit for me, Alden, really speaks to what I like to say is let's create workplaces where leaders literally bring people to their greatness, to help them realize their potential. Mm-hmm. So you say in the book, the team leader's role is to help team members see well beyond the visible horizon and find ways to surpass real and or imagined limitations. So you have these 5 A's to be able to help lead them through that. Can we talk about those next?
We could talk about that for the next 2 hours.
Okay.
That's a really big topic for me.
Okay, I like it. Well, where do you want to start?
Heart of all leadership, whether it's internal or external. So would you like me to start with the first A of Aspire?
Please, aspire. Let's aspire.
Think about a leadership role here. And imagine for a moment you're the captain trying to cross an ocean and leave the comfort zone of mediocrity, which is that harbor you already know. And everyone else knows it too. And so now you're trying to convince your team that, hey, we need to go across, leave the safe spot, and go across to this place we can't even see yet. Aspiring is about flipping the paradigm of seeing is believing to believing is seeing. Aspiring is what leaders, the great leaders, can get people to believe in a vision and experience that vision before they've ever achieved it. And that's a critical milestone to occur on your path to doing something that's never been done before.
Oh, and that's definitely leading people to their greatness. And I love that. Okay. And then the next A is assume, usually not necessarily a good word, but you made it in a different way.
Yes, I do. And that is assume that your process of bringing your teammates on was successful. Assume they can do what they say they can do. Give them enough room and the guardrails to kind of go around and figure out their own ways to get the job done, not thinking of them as cogs in a machine where, hey, here, I want it done this way. Because nothing kills initiative more than somebody going, well, actually, I want you to do it like this. Well, if you wanted me to do it like that, why don't you tell me from the very beginning? Right. Instead, you want the best creativity. So assume good intent. Assume they're good enough already. Let them sail. Let them fly and soar and see where they take you. Most of the time, you'll be surprised.
I really appreciate that. I very much appreciate that. Is this what you said about let them figure out how they want to get it done on their own versus you telling them how to do it? I see that all the time in organizations, and they wonder why people are not engaged. It's amazing. Right. Okay, next A is assess.
When we're assessing, imagine again, we're back in our imaginary ship and we're heading off to a new port of call way beyond the horizon. One of the things that's really helpful in team building process is being able to measure progress. Have routine elements. It's not that you're doing a trust but verify. It's being like, let's assess how we're doing. What's working, what's not. We want to know what's not working a lot sooner than we do than what is working. Let everybody get very comfortable at opening up their actions for different points of view of saying, hey, this is what's working for me or this what isn't working. And the more we get to see our progress, the more we get motivated on working even harder towards that goal and making it a reality.
Absolutely. Just it's motivating. It's intrinsic motivation, actually. Okay, and then this is probably related to that from what you said so far, assure.
Yes, but I call it out separately from assessing because assessing is a very specific process of evaluating the work. Assuring is the more emotional, empathetic point of view of figuratively putting your arm around the team saying, hey, it's okay. We're going to make these mistakes. Let's get back up. Let's learn from them and keep moving forward. Sometimes it's not making the mistake. Sometimes it's just, I don't know if we can do this, and knocking back those demons of doubt.
Yeah.
Or letting them know they're good enough. And yes, it seems like a long ways away, that distant over the horizon idea of what we're after, but we're making progress, and you assure them that their efforts are worthwhile.
Okay, let's go to Cinderella Man. Remember the movie Cinderella Man? Did you see it?
No.
With Russell Crowe. He's the boxer. His trainer, I'll get his name in just a second here. Just before Russell Crowe, Cinderella Man, goes into his fight, he's laying there and he's getting ready and he's on the table and his trainer comes in and he goes, who was it that knocked out XYZ in the third round? And then Russell Crowe goes, that was me. That would be me. And then he goes through this long list of all of these fights that this guy does. So he's reminding him, right? He's declaring the progress that he's already covered. I think that is a beautiful summation. Before you go into the ring, let's remind you of how great you are and how far you've come, right?
I love that. I'm writing that down too, by the way.
See, we're in this together. It's just so fun. You got to watch the movie. Great. You'll love it. You'll find yourself all over in that movie, Alden.
Great. But
right?
you hit the nail on the head with that example.
Mm-hmm.
It is, part of that is just reminding them how great they really are and that we can do this, because it's so easy, especially, and I'm really speaking to people about things that haven't been done before. I'm not talking about little baby incremental improvements. Like, no, we're going to go solve this problem.
Right.
And this problem requires earth-shattering new technology or new ways to get things out. Those are very lonely, terrifying journeys if you don't have people that have each other's backs.
Mm-hmm. And I love your phrase, breaking the demons of doubt. Oh gosh, right? I mean, don't we all have a few of those hanging around on our shoulders and around our throat?
And we
right?
have
if we're up to something, we certainly do.
We do. And that's, by the way, just total side note, I want people to reframe those as fuel. Anytime those demons of doubt show up, say, yes, I am on the right path. This is the area I'm supposed to be going to. Go proudly in face of those doubts.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I love about that, Alden, is it's just redirecting that energy. Doubt has a powerful energy to it. And to your point, I love that redirecting that positively is where the opportunity is. That's fabulous. Mm-hmm. All right. Last of the A's is appreciate. That's right smack down my lane.
I got to tell you, I am an executive coach when I'm not on stage or I'm not writing, and you would be shocked. Maybe you would not be, but I'm shocked all the time when an executive who might have 3,000 or 4,000 people on their team, and they're so transactionally focused on getting to the next goal, the next return on investment, the next you pick the KPI, that once they get there, like, okay, it's time to go to the next one. I'm like, no, it's not. Stop for a moment.
Right.
Let's appreciate what's just transpired to get us here. And let's shift from being transactional to relationship building. Mm-hmm. Because once people start to feel like, oh, it just doesn't matter how much I put out, there's just one's coming, they feel underappreciated, and they'll be like, well, they don't really care about me. Appreciation is a key component to showing how much you care. And sometimes appreciation isn't in the form of a that a boy. It's, hey, Cindy, I know you're a single mom. You have 2 kids at home, and you're dealing with a dementia grandparent. I can only begin to understand how you're putting that all together, and you're showing up to do all these different things, and you actually took the time to understand what Cindy was dealing with. That is a whole different level of appreciation, and that's the kind of appreciation we're after. Mm-hmm. Take a moment to take a step back and put yourself in the shoes of all of those people you care about and really get to appreciate the efforts they're bringing to the team.
Mm-hmm. I love that, Alden. Again, we could almost probably finish the other sentences, but same thing for me when I'm working with people to develop their leadership skills is to teach them how to express that kind of appreciation. And what I always like to say, if you're Cindy or Cynthia, what you called her, if she's on the other end of that, I can almost guarantee she's going to be moved to tears. And I always tell people your objective when you give gratitude and appreciation, ideally, there's tears there. And I don't mean to make them cry. I mean to move them to tears, right? Because you saw them so clearly and to their core, what really matters to them. And you tell them that you appreciate them for that. They're not going anywhere.
No, they're not going anywhere. And the reason they're not going anywhere is you took the extra time to connect with their heart. Mm-hmm. I'll just throw in one of my favorite quotations. It's in the book by Abraham Lincoln. And I think he says it something like this: to win a person to your cause, you must first reach their heart, the great high road to their reason. In a lot of ways to get somebody on board with whatever you're trying to do, you have to take a step back and take a step down from the head to the heart to really connect with them emotionally before you can start talking about the logic of why XYZ KPI is why we need to achieve.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now you've situated us perfectly where I want to go next, Alden, and that's the idea of respect. You have a very powerful way of accessing respect through 3 elements. Let's talk about those briefly.
Mm-hmm. And I want to just set a tone for these three elements of respect on the broader context. Everybody knows that respect is a nice to have. It's an HR thing. But I want everyone to understand that the mutual respect we're after, the purpose behind it is to actually embrace the conflict so we can get to contribution. The key piece. And when I talk about the 3 R's of respect, we're doing that so we can embrace conflict that leads to confidence that develops contribution. So when we're talking about realizing where respect comes from, and that it comes from either your position of authority or your actions. And by the way, the position of authority, that's not very long lasting if that's what you're going to be doing.
Right? You say that in the book too.
Those actions, and what those actions are, is your willingness to invite different points of view in. That's the conflict I'm referring to. And then when that is recognized, then you're in a position to look for these different points of view and always require that kind of challenge for each other. And that brings you to a place where people feel more confident and they want to contribute more. And that's really a crossing of the chasm between a group and a team, is at that point of respect.
Oh my gosh, Alden, that was worth the price of admission right there. That was so powerful and so opening. I can't tell you how often I've worked with organizations where people, 1, can't communicate, and 2, they most certainly can't navigate through conflict. And now I better understand why, because they haven't really developed a really cohesive, strong, unstoppable team.
No, it's critical. And, I wrote this book. I started writing it 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Well, I guess I started writing it 6 years ago. And, it came out in March of 2019. And I now am working on a second revision of it at this point, because I like to think of these books, this one and Be Unstoppable, as you're continually just improving what you learn throughout the process. And I really want people to know this is a really important aspect of leadership, is how you embrace conflict. Mm-hmm. And it involves mutual respect.
Oh my gosh, Alden, we really probably need just to keep the conversation going for another 7 hours, as you say, but I just need you. Well, so when when the next book, you just have to come back on, that's all. So let's take our last break here. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. We're on the air with Alden Mills. He's the author of Unstoppable Teams, the 4 Essential Actions of High Performance Leadership. We've been talking about respect and the 5 A's of his basis of team making. After the break, we're going to talk about the 5 phases of building a team. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Dr. Elise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Elise to speak to your organization, please visit her at elisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Elise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Elise, send an email to Elise, A-L-I-S-E, at elisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us and welcome back to Working on Purpose. One other bit of news for you is the anthology I've been working on is out now. It's called Passionately Striving and Why, and it's a collection of 25 stories from women around the world that I handpicked from Australia to Zambia, and they share their very intimate story of how they discovered their purpose and are now serving from it. So it's meant to be 1 part education, here's how they did it, and 1 part inspiration, come with us. It's great to work on purpose. If you're just now joining the program, my guest is Alden Mills. He's a 3-time Navy SEAL platoon commander, entrepreneur, speaker, and author of Unstoppable Teams, the 4 Essential Actions of High Performance Leadership, which is what we're talking about today. So, Alden, one of the things that maybe makes the show a little bit different is that the content is curated. And by that, I mean, as I'm trying to build on the content, I generally don't repeat. So when I'm going through your book, I'm trying to pull out the things that we haven't really talked about that are new and fresh for the show. Mm-hmm. So I've never heard of this notion of 5 phases of team making. So will you walk us through the 5? Phase 1 being connected group.
Let's take it from the top. You're a new team leader. You're thrown into this new position. You've inherited an underperforming group of individuals. Typically, right? Oh, how lucky am I? And actually, that's how I want you to feel, because you want to walk into the underperforming. It's actually a lot harder to walk into the top performing and keep the top performing going. The underperforming, the first thing you're going to do is, hey, I got to start to connect. I've got to connect with everybody, literally and figuratively. The figurative part is, oh, gee, look, I got them all on an email together, and I'm sending out an all hands, address of sorts. That will then lead to the next phase, which is this directed group of, hey, everybody, this is where we need to go. It's between those two that we think we have done enough as a team leader, because we're really busy ourselves. We have other things we have to do, right? I've got lots of emails in my inbox to deal with. That's very important. We can sometimes forget those things, because at the end of the day, what's really most important is not just taking a connected and a directed group, which I've discovered is, I would put it roughly at about 80% of all corporate organizations out there are in that connected directed. They feel like, oh, I've done enough as a leader, right? I send out all hands meetings. They know the KPIs, and see you at the end of the quarter. The next phase is, and that's the one that becomes the biggest challenge, and that's where you introduce the respect component of saying, I think we ought to go right, and somebody actually has the courage to raise their hand and say, actually, I think we ought to go left. That's the bridge that builds us to the first true team. It moves us from a directed group into a team. So from there into what I would call in a high performance team, everybody is empowered. Now they all feel like leaders or owners. And when they all feel like owners, they have the authority and the responsibility to make their own decisions. So then you may say, well, how do I get to the final stage? The final stage is what I call an unstoppable team. The unstoppable team is a point where we're not just thinking of our team internally anymore. It's just not my directs. It's not only the people I've been communicating with. It's all the other people that help this team succeed. I call them the 4 C's. They are our customers, our coworkers. Now, those are coworkers that are not on our team, but they could be in the organization. Let's say I'm a front office team. I have back office people that help me. If I don't have them, then our team doesn't hit where we need to get going. They are still part of the team. They're just external team members. So you have customers, coworkers, and you have contributors. Those are vendors. People that we need, if they don't show up, and a vendor could be the person who delivers FedEx for you, or it could be the people who are delivering the oxygen to your hospital every week that you desperately need. They're part of that team. Then the final piece is a larger piece, and for some, Marriott as an example, the community, which is the 4th team member, is a critical piece. They're trying to be the most favorite hotel brand in the world, and they operate in 110 different countries. Those are 110 different cultures. Learning the cultural elements of each community you work in is critical. And the more you get your community involved, that along with those other 3 C's that I just talked about, you take care of them and they will make you unstoppable.
Oh, Alden, you are so speaking my love language, right? And I mentioned to you in our correspondence too. I'm a conscious capitalist, and I serve on the board here in Dallas. And one of our four tenets of conscious capitalism is stakeholder capitalism, and that's what it sounds like to me. I don't know if that's what you're also describing, or if you align on that. But is this relative to stakeholder capitalism, or do you see it distinct?
I'm embarrassed to tell you that I haven't read Conscious Capitalism. I'm quite aware of the book, and I've been working in espousing these virtues for years, and
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely in alignment with what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Well, no need to be embarrassed, because what we find all the time when we're recruiting new members, Alton, when we introduce them, they're like, yeah, that makes complete sense. I've been doing that for years. Where have
Correct.
people been? It's very intuitive, but conscious capitalism is a global movement, and Dr. Raj Sisodia and John Mackey, who was the former Whole Foods CEO, are the ones that actually birthed it. When I read this part of your book, I was like, oh, this sounds exactly like conscious capitalism, but the way you describe it is even more alluring. So it really gives us access to the possibility, especially here's what I love about what you've done, Alden. So sometimes conscious capitalism and stakeholder capitalism get a bad rap because the naysayers talk about it as, oh, you wanted to care for society instead of making a profit. And what you're saying is, oh no, actually, when you take care of all these distinctive communities, they're rowing in the same boat with you, and you have more momentum and more people pulling for you than you do against you. That's a whole different perspective.
Elise, this is a slight dovetail, but your show starts off with the introduction about what I'm going to say here to people. If you haven't been to a war-torn country before, if you haven't really understood where terrorism comes from, then you don't really understand how business can be really good for everybody. At the end of the day, the reason we get terrorists is because they have no hope. They have nothing left. And so it will only be valuable to them for their own human sacrifice that some other organization will take care of their family after they blow themselves up. Business is a very good thing for communities.
Mm-hmm.
And businesses help everybody, especially if you look at it from that light. One of the best weapons that the United States has is not one that blows anything up. It's one that helps build communities up from the ground up and make them have pride of ownership and feel valued for creating value for a community and getting paid for that value. So now they have the hope of education and the hope of healthcare and the hope of being able to bring something in their mind's eye to be valuable to somebody else. That, to me, is a really important element of what we should all in society be helping around the world with.
I am with you, Alden. We are literally now here's the thing. You've been on the show. I know how to find you. You can run, but you can't hide from me, right? I know you now.
There's no hiding. I'm happy to come back.
Okay, good. Well, another thing that this speaks to here, which is if you haven't heard of Stephen Morris and his book, The Beautiful Business, it's partly what you're also describing here. And I also talk about it in my book. He's been on the show. Beautiful concept. And the whole idea is just what you're saying, Alden. Listeners and viewers, it's the idea of how can you reach to be able to more thoughtfully and more caringly serve those communities that are connected to your business. If you take a moment to consider, how can I do a little bit more to help? And add, and he's a brand guy and he's an artist as well. And so all he's talking about is just lifting your gaze a little bit and seeing where else can I help? Because when you consider how much good you can do with and through your business while you're making a profit, it's pretty alluring.
I think it's not only pretty alluring, it inspires you and helps you inspire others with a purpose. And when you start connecting that purpose with the end customer and seeing, hey, look how we helped a community put food on their plate, or how we help them with their own dignity to do A, B, or C, then all of a sudden work isn't work anymore.
It's not that 4-letter word people associate with.
No, it's not. No, it becomes a fulfillment center. It becomes a mission. It becomes the greater purpose of your life.
I completely agree, Alden, which is exactly what I'm out doing. I'm out to help companies to be able to achieve, to create that kind of a place where people actually are magnetized to, and they become the best version of themselves. That's what I'm out to do. So you and I are playing in the same pond. We're doing our part to create that ripple in the world, right? Anyway, I could talk a lot about this too. One more thing I want us to talk about before we get out, run out of time, because I've never had anybody I've never seen this in a book. I've never heard anybody talk about it. And I want you to talk about the importance of and how to disband a team once they've done their thing. This is so important.
It's really important. And if you've done half of what I'm talking about in the book, a quarter of what I've done, if you remember nothing else, then care.
Mm-hmm.
And people end up feeling cared for. Unfortunately, a lot of us don't come from caring, loving families. They have to create it on their own journey of life.
Right.
And many times, great leaders create a family people have never had before.
Yes.
The form of this team. And when a team is finally disbanded, and let's not forget the purpose of a team in the first place, it's to go achieve something specific. The same Super Bowl team that won the Super Bowl last year is not the same team for this year. The team that went out to do the SEAL mission is not the same team to do another SEAL mission. The team that invented the iPhone is not the same team that's going to invent the next iPhone.
Right.
The teams are meant to disband. They're meant to renewal and replenish and repair and any other R you want to think of in that, and re-energize, right? And eventually a team's going to get disbanded. And when that happens, appreciate the emotional grieving that comes with that.
Mm-hmm.
That is a time period to grieve. And there are stages of grief. People will have loss. They will have emptiness. They will be like, I have just lost a family that I have never had before. I still have reunions from the teams that I have built with Perfect Fitness. They remember with such fondness, they still want to get together. So really take that time. And how does that time, I give some examples of how to do it in the book, but bring them together, expect it, let people talk about what it makes them feel like, do it in a way where you get to celebrate and leave them that time to grieve.
Mm-hmm. Well, the other thing that you said that I thought was brilliant was you said give people different assignments to make the party ceremony memorable and personal, and let them weigh into and create that party together, and then let them have the experience of sharing with quotations and funny stories and major milestones, and likely, as you say, probably going to be some tears, which means you did it right. So I've never seen anybody talk about how to disband teams and how to do it well, and that was very distinctive, Alden. So thank you for that. Here we are. We've managed to come to the end of the show already. It goes by so very fast. You know what this show is about. What would you like to leave our listeners and viewers with across the world?
I really want everybody to understand two things. Number one, you are all leaders. You all have a gift. Every single one of us. It may show up in the form of an obstacle, but how you learn to overcome whatever said obstacle is develops your gift. Part two, I'm a big believer that everybody is unstoppable, but you must understand unstoppable is a choice. You make a choice daily to be unstoppable, to go in the direction of achieving your dreams.
What a beautiful way to finish, Alden. It is so wonderful to know you, to have you on the air with me, to share with my listeners and viewers, to read your book, to be touched by your words, and to learn from you. Thank you very much for being on Working on Purpose.
Thank you.
And until we meet again. So wait with me. I'll be right back. Just a sec. Let me close the show with us here. So listeners and viewers, if you want to learn more about Alden Mills, his work or his books, the best way to go about that is to go to his website. It's alden-mills.com. So it's ALDEN-mills, MILLS.com. Last week, if you missed the live show, you can always catch a recorded podcast. We were on the air with Victoria Ruse Olson. She's a senior leadership consultant at Franklin Covey and co-author of Everyone Deserves a Great Manager, the 6 critical practices of leading a team. Next week, we'll be on the air with Dr. Grace Lorden talking about how to unleash your magnificence through small, mighty steps, and learning from her book, Think big, take small steps, and build the future you want. See you there. And remember, work is an integral and important part of our lives and can be one of the best adventures and means of realizing our potential and making the impact we crave. So let's work on purpose.
We hope you've enjoyed this week's program. Be sure to tune into Working on Purpose, featuring your host, Dr. Elise Cortez, each week on W4CY. Together, we'll create a world where business operates conscientiously, leadership inspires impassioned performance, and employees are fulfilled in work that provides the meaning and purpose they crave. See you there. Let's work on purpose.